first up, we're going to talk about the oscillators. And I can't say this enough, and I'll undoubtedly say it in the demonstration, but oscillators aren't given enough credit for distinctive sound. We always go straight for the filter and act like the oscillators are just going to, put out a sawtooth is a sawtooth. But the fact of the matter is a sawtooth is not a sawtooth. And the waveforms generated by the Minimoog are slightly different than, say, the waveforms generated by something that is digital or even modern analog. They have their own unique character, they have their own harmonic structure, and even if they kind of look like the typical waves on the scope, which I'm not sure that they do, if I remember correctly, they have their own tone, they have their own sound. So I would just like to demonstrate the oscillators found on the Minimoog and celebrate their contribution to the iconic and desirable Minimoog sound. Okay, we are looking at, of course, the Moog Minimoog. And we're going to start off the demonstration with the oscillators, of course, as per tradition. So there is something special about the Minimoog's oscillators. I don't know if it's due to the fact that they are overdriven in some ways in their architecture or some sort of filter outcome that's happening even though the filter is completely open and technically isn't affecting the sound, or maybe a combination of both of those things. Maybe the circuitry, maybe the linearity, or I don't know what it is. But there's something about these oscillators that makes them sound good without, any filtering or anything else. They just have an inherently good sound, which is kind of unfortunate because, the oscillator is supposed to provide the raw material for you to shape. And if the oscillator sounds good without any shaping, it leads to the fact that even now, after all these decades, popular electronic music can just have like a sawtooth wave or a square wave, as the sound that we're hearing. And that was never the intention. These are just supposed to be, this is like, butter and flour. And we've basically made these dishes that's like, here's a pile of delicious flour, go to work, And that's basically what we've done. This is part of the recipe, and yet it sounds so good, it can be all of the recipe. So enjoy this big spoonful of butter. Here's the butter. So let's dive in and listen to the oscillator found on the Moog Minimoog. This is oscillator 1, and you might notice it does not have a tuning knob. And why? This is probably some sort of cost-saving measure, but the tuning knob for the whole synthesizer is the tuning knob for oscillator 1. We tune oscillator 1 with the overall tuning knob, and then the other tuning knobs are subsequent to that. So then we're tuning these oscillators in reference to the overarching tuning that is oscillator 1, if that makes sense. So a wise person would have tuned the synthesizer to A before they started, and I guess that's... that indicates to what level I am wise. So I don't know what notes we're actually playing, but we're somewhere in the ballpark. And of course I could hit the old A440, but I think I tuned this. This is no longer A440, but it's somewhere in the ballpark. And let's just see. So we can just pretend that this is A440, and now we're in tune. And I'm sorry to all the people with perfect pitch out there going, what? What are you talking? Oh my God. We're just going to go ahead with it. It doesn't really matter if it's in tune. I mean, we will be dealing with ranges, but if the range is a half step off, we're not going to have a seizure about it. Okay, let's dig in. We're starting off with this amazing triangle. I don't know if you've ever seen my ancient Minimoog demonstration, which was one of my first synth demonstrations ever, and it's very short. This is kind of a response to that, but I was very excited about the triangle, and people are still making fun of me for my delight about the triangle, but this is a great sounding triangle. Let's hear it. Okay, I'm not going to deal a lot with the low setting on oscillator 1 because we can't use oscillator 1 to modulate anything, and therefore the low setting on oscillator 1 is just clicks. And not very loud clicks at that. I don't know why I guess it's because there aren't a lot of harmonics in the triangle wave. But yeah, if you even heard any clicks there, we're hearing sub-audio range pulses the pulses that make up sound, and you can't really use them unless you're creating a really, like, if you want to, you can use this as a metronome if you like. Oscillator 1 is great for using a metronome. You just have to figure out which which tempos these frequencies align with. But anyway, yeah, I've never known, and it's embarrassing. I'm not sure why. Oscillator 1 and 2 on this synthesizer have the low setting because they can't be directed to modulate anything. You can make interesting combinations of clicks, and maybe that was the intention. Maybe it was like a synthesizer benefit. Here's a source of clicks for you. But I think ultimately what it was is there was an economy in having all of these oscillators be of this same basic architecture. And in doing so, it just was easier to, let this, you multiply the amount of like different parts that you have to have. It's just simpler to have every oscillator have that function, even though oscillator 3 is really the one that directs modulation from an oscillator. So anyway, yeah, we're not going to talk a lot about the clicks, although I just talked a lot about the clicks. So I guess we're going to talk a lot about the clicks, but now I'm moving on to the triangle, and we are going to listen to its range. If at any point you hear a little sort of portamento sneaking in there, it has to do with how old this Minimoog is, which it's nearly 50. I think it's 49 years old. It's had relatively little service, and the key contacts actually need to be cleaned, so they get a little sloppy, and there's a little bit of lag generation going on at times. So if you hear that, that's what's going on. There's nothing wrong with the glide, which we'll dig into, but yeah, so anytime you hear that, do not panic. But anyhow, that is our triangle. The triangle, which is really close to a sine, doesn't have like a lot of harmonics, so it's ridiculous for me to assert that this is a great sounding triangle, because triangles are basically triangles. But I've heard different kinds of triangles, and I have to say I've never heard a triangle that pleased me as much as the triangle found on the Moog Minimoog. I don't know why that is. I don't know what's happening. Maybe it's not entirely a triangle. It's been a long time since I looked at it on a scope. But whatever it is, I love it. It's a great sounding triangle. We're going to skip this next waveform because it's a combination of two waveforms. And so I want to cover the two waveforms that it is a combination of before we go onto it. So let's jump to the sawtooth, the Minimoog sawtooth, and let's go through the range here. It is raspy, but it has more character than a lot of sawtooths, probably because it is flawed. It has saturation going on. It has, I don't think it's like a perfect sawtooth. And then 2 feet.